November 25th, 1950, and this was the Canadian Football Championship game, the Grey Cup, played between the Toronto Argonauts and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. The 38th Grey Cup Championship game was played at Varsity Stadium in Toronto in front of exactly 27,101 fans, but because of the weather conditions, it came to be remembered as the Mud Bowl. This day in weather history. As is sometimes the case in a league with only a handful of teams, this Grey Cup matchup featured two teams against each other for the sixth time. But it didn't matter. The Argonauts won the game 13-0, but that also didn't matter. They had just won a game in the most improbable of environments and with questions still to this day left unanswered. For instance, how did conditions get so impossible that this hallowed match will forever be known not for the winner and not for the defensive struggle against all odds? No, this will be remembered for being what is coined the Mud Bowl. Let's go back now and see how things might have gone awry here. First, the day before the game, a rare, heavy, late November snowfall blanketed the field. Remember that this is the year 1950. Technology isn't exactly at its zenith yet. They brought in what was termed heavy equipment to clear the snowfall before the game. How heavy was this heavy equipment? The ground is covered in snow, so the turf is wet underneath. You bring anything too heavy and it's just going to chew up the surface. And that is exactly what happened. The equipment damaged the turf, but to be fair, it's only 1950, so the groundskeeping likely wasn't as crackin' as you'd find by today's modern standards, to say the least. As a result, the Varsity Stadium grass turf was already gnarled up from the poor conditions during the regular season. Then, to just add a total dose of insult to injury, on the morning of the championship game, the weather turned a fast one on the organizers when the temperatures became much warmer and the snowfall turned to a steady rain. By game time, you now had a super saturated surface that had been beat up all year and also just had heavy machinery further butchering the turf, and the rain continued throughout the game. This is what I meant at the start when I said that the final score really didn't matter at all. The play was clumsy and sloppy in these terrible conditions, and both teams had great difficulty even moving the ball forward. So this was definitely not an offensive gem. It was just plain offensive to watch as a fan. Today's episode features a podcast video short that you can watch either on TV with the Weather Network in Canada or online anywhere around the world at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. The oppressively wet and muddy conditions at Toronto's Varsity Stadium created a quagmire, and the Argos actually kicked for what turned out to be the winning point as early as the first quarter. And again, in true goofy CFL fashion, it was a point recognized only in this unique league brand of football. You see, Winnipeg misjudged a Toronto punt from inside their half of the 55-yard line. Yet another CFL oddity. Anyway, the ball went over his head and into the end zone for what is called a rouge. 1 point is awarded with the concession of one team to let the ball carry into and die in their own end zone. Now, I do not know this for certain, and I can probably look it up. But instead, for me, it's easier and funnier to suggest that it might be termed rouge, because that is the color of embarrassment you'd turn by letting such a thing happen by your special teams. Anyway, the details of the game are not important. I'm going to say this, though. It was the last time a team had been shut out in a Grey Cup final. The aftermath of the game generated severe criticism for the choice of Varsity Stadium. That was unfair. The venue had become almost the de facto home of the Grey Cup final matches because it had a large seating capacity for its time. Remember, it's only 1950. And for the fact that it is normally warmer weather in late November and early December compared to other cities across Canada. Some believed the game could have been played the week prior when it was nicer, but again, hindsight is a luxury only enjoyed after the fact. A writer who covered the game used very colorful terms when he described the field as pigs wallow. I like that one. And the game a slogging show. Wow, so harsh. This day in weather history. Tomorrow is November 26th, and for this we present our first U.S. Thanksgiving special. Because we're all likely going to be watching football all day anyway, we have found a game where the weather took over and totally ruined the quality of play and affected the game so badly that it's still remembered for all the wrong reasons today. On this day in weather history, with me, your host, Chris May.